This is SolsideUp. I'm your host, Sol. Welcome to an hour of beautiful conversation. Open your heart and enjoy. Well, hi everyone. It's been a while since I've been having guests on my podcast, but today I have Louise Edington from, you're originally from Britain, but now you live in the States, right?
Yeah, I live in Utah, home of the Mormons. So
You're with the Mormons. Yeah.
yes,
How's that working out?
it's interesting. It was a culture shock when we moved here from Australia to they're very kind of interesting culture. It's
Yeah.
very, very restricted kind of thing.
So they have like several wives and stuff like that. Is that a myth or is it true?
Well, the mainstream church, they just have one wife, but there are polygamists living around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Polyamory is very hip these days. So they just put it
Yeah, but
into.
for them, it's only for the men, of course, to have many wives. It's not for the women
Oh
to have.
yeah, oh yeah, that's it. Shoot. Okay, then it's not working. We don't like that. Well, it's nice to have you here. Anyway, we've been crossing circles for quite a while now, and I've been paying attention to your updates where you sometimes celebrate how well your book is on astrology is doing. It wasn't your first book, as I assumed, but it was your second book of astrology. Which book is that? Well, you
Yeah,
have it, of course.
of course I do. This was my first one, Modern Astrology, and that sells okay. That was,
Mhm.
and then this is the bestseller on Amazon.
It's a
It's got
nice
like,
cover.
yeah, isn't it? Yeah,
It's a very nice cover. I like it.
it's got something like 4,300 ratings now on Amazon, but it's written from a gender neutral perspective. It asks people to change the language they use in astrology, and I introduced the astrology of sect for the language to use for astrology moving forward. So we stop saying this is male, this is female, this is masculine, this is.
Hmm.
I'm trying to get people to say day, night, and anything. Anyway,
Oh, and not even yin yang.
well, I said yin yang too, but I said that's a possibility. But I think most people say, well, yin is feminine and yang is masculine now. They just, people understand it as masculine and feminine. I think it's just something that needs to be thought about in
Hmm.
astrology, how we
Interesting.
talk all about, their charts. And it came a lot. Well, I was asked to write the book from a gender neutral perspective,
Huh.
but it came from readings I've had. People look at my chart and go, "Oh, you've got a very masculine
Oh
chart."
yeah, they
And
do. Yeah. I try to avoid that. I never go into that. Like I tend to look at it as introverted, extroverted. That for me
yeah,
works. Like it's just modus of operandi, where there's like a different kind of vibe to the plus signs than to the minus signs, like the yin signs. Like it's more introverted and then extroverted. But I agree with you. I also have a very masculine chart, and it's not fun for a woman to hear that, oh, you have a very masculine chart, because
yeah.
I prefer, especially because I identify as a woman,
Mhm.
um, to be seen as a woman, to be experienced as a woman, even though, with all these so-called masculine traits, I come off as a typically, whatever that means, strong woman.
Oh, me too, as you know. But I think it really, and we've gone on down this track, so let's go down it more. It's more the book.
Wormhole.
The book's more about us as astrologers, how we approach our reading.
Nice. That's very
And
good.
well, because you don't know how people are identifying. I,
Exactly.
I actually ask in my intake form, how the people want to be addressed,
Oh,
she or they or whatever. But gender fluidity is becoming more common, and I think we have to be really sensitive when we're speaking to people about their charts. So,
mm. Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the art of interpretation and being the reader of any chart is difficult because it requires such a high degree of sensitivity towards the one you're reading for. And that's not something we attain without having a certain kind of experience or getting the certain kind of knowledge. And I know you also, like I am, you're also involved with the work of OPA. The
Yes.
Organization for Professional Astrology, yes. And what is your role there?
I post their social media posts,
Oh, you do that,
and
yeah, yeah.
video updates. Yeah, because I'm always on social media, so I do that. And I'm actually going to be, I'm almost OPA certified, so I'm going to be a peer group leader. So
I did one of those, and then the distance traveling to the United States, it was just too far. I'm coming out of Europe, but the peer group work is amazing, though, and it's recommended for anyone who wants to do like a proper, healthy training that is all about the client astrologer exchange. One of these peer groups can be extremely educational and raise your consciousness and your awareness around the incredibly powerful medium that astrology is. People really believe in astrology and they take our words seriously. And I see quite often quite a bit of fear when people come to an astrologer, like, oh, you're going to tell me something creepy now, that this will be like, yeah, you've probably had that experience as well, haven't you?
or they've had a bad experience where somebody's,
Yes.
told them their partner's going to die or something like that.
Oh.
It's
Oh, well, I've heard stories.
and OPA's all about professional standards, and they do the peer groups on Zoom now, so you can do
Oh,
them
they
online.
do. Oh, maybe I can get my certification too. Yay.
Thanks to the pandemic, they started
Progress.
doing them online and realized it works very well. So
Oh, good, because yeah, that's been a challenge for me. I really appreciated not traveling as much as I used to do. The pandemic was a relief in that sense because it's all the jet lag and the short journeys, and then you are back and forth in such a short amount of time, and it's really like intense experiences. It's fun, but it's 2 or 3 times a year. It can be a little hectic when you have kids and an everyday life that needs to work as well.
No time for actual vacation either. So.
No, no time for vacations. All right. So how long have you been working as an astrologer or been into astrology?
Yeah, well, I've been working professionally charging for money since 2012, since late 2012, but I actually started studying astrology. Well, I've always loved it. I've got some pieces of notes and things I made when I was like a young teenager, in my tweens, about sun signs and things, and I would read horoscopes and stuff. But it's a similar story to many astrologers. It was on my Saturn return. We all seem to discover it on Saturn return. So I was age 29 going through all the Saturn return stuff, and I went through some major life changes, as we all do on the Saturn return. And one of my new friends in these major life changes had done an astrology class, and she read my chart, and I was just like, wow, there's more to it than the sun signs. And gave me some books, gave me a table of houses and things, and I taught myself how to hand calculate charts because it was before computers, and I never stopped studying it.
Well, it is a weird passion. It never stops. It's like there's always more to discover, and then there's also this incredible, interesting coexistence between reality as it's constantly evolving and how the astrological cycles underneath are kind of synchronistically always kind of showing us how it is all related to cycles. And that for me is like, ooh, it never stops being interesting in a way. However, I did read once, and that was extremely interesting. And that was the late Jeff Jor who wrote an article about, it was sort of a predictive article, how the internet, the age of internet would change the astrological cycles. And that was like mind blowing to me. And ever since, I haven't been able to shake off that thought, because we can't really predict anything, because it's like this kind of reality that we're living in right now is moving at such a quick pace. And the technology, it's such a huge experiment on humanity in terms of, well, damage is done to the brain, and how we are being affected by this constant influx of data and information that comes every day. I'm sure you already read the news today, Louise.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Of
Well,
course.
you saw before I even got out of bed, I was sitting there drinking my coffee. I commented on one of your posts this
Oh,
morning.
you did? Yeah, that's true. I actually saw that.
Yes, I know what's going on at any moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I've been thinking a lot about that. And also because since I don't know, maybe because I'm Aquarian and I'm into these macro perspectives, I often tend to think, as well as my role as an astrologer and as a communicator online, how I wield that power in terms of putting words into people's mouths, for instance, and, heralding things that might not turn out exactly how I thought, or, of trying to find that understanding of what is a healthy approach, what is a healthy appearance, a healthy voice in the world of astrology today. And that's really something I've been, yeah, it's
Always,
moving.
always in my mind. I mean, I have my Chiron in Aquarius in my
Ah,
second house, and my progressed sun has been sitting on my Chiron
oh,
for
it
the
is.
last.
Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I've constantly think about that. What's a healthy approach? And I try to take the approach of, well, these might be challenging times and energies, but
Mhm.
this is how we can respond to them, kind of thing. That's, I
Yeah.
think,
Yes,
very healthy.
exactly. Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I write
yeah.
for a magazine in Norway, and there was a skeptic who asked me, what is your approach? Because he had awareness that it takes more to kind of predict something than just, for instance, someone's sun sign. And I said, yes, within that limited format, I'm trying to see what cycles unfolds. And my approach is always, how can we wield those forces? How can we create with them instead of being created by them? So it's always that kind of approach. All right, but we were going to get together today because I have like a thing lately. It's coming more and more and more, and I don't know whether it's my Mercury in Pisces finally really blossoming and flourishing into a more psychic approach to my work. But the tarot is coming back like big time. And I've always dabbled in everything, like I think a lot of us astrologers were into, reading hands or looking
Yes.
into the coffee cup or whatever.
Oh, I've looked into everything.
If I can read it, I'm interested, Okay, bring it. Show me your hand. But the tarot, I don't know. There is something that just came with such a force through me. This, I think in May or something. I don't know what that was, and I just got the urge. I think I will have to use the tarot more and more and more and more in my work in a way. I don't know how yet, but I would love to get to know the tarot much more. And about the same time, I discovered that you're actually posting quite a bit of tarot online. Yeah, it's like today you mix them into your astrology, and that really tickled my curiosity. And then you mentioned you are writing a book about the tarot and astrology. And then I thought, well, Louise got to come. I have to ask her to join for a podcast because I find that so fascinating. But I assume that a little bit more about the tarot in terms of how to apply it to astrology than I do. So I would
Well,
love to hear what's the approach in this book.
it's kind of not an awkward, it's kind of a funny way it occurred. And I have a 12th house sun and Jupiter,
Ah,
right? And so I'm very kind of about the connections. And my publisher is a publisher that actually pays people to write books. Okay.
what a
And
great publisher. Can you put me in contact? I want a publisher like that.
they find, but I write to their outline, but I have to like the outline. Obviously,
Yes,
they send.
of course. Yeah.
And they said to me, we see that you use tarot with your astrology a little. We'd like you to write the next one. And instantly my 12th house fears were like, I'm not a professional tarot reader.
Yeah. It's a big deck, there's a lot of cards in this deck.
But I've used tarot, particularly I have like a Patreon, but it's not on Patreon, it's a membership thing. And I've been using the cards for a long time, and I've done card pulls, on Facebook Live. And so, and I've got this deck, my favorite deck, next to me at all times. I'm always just like touching it and pulling cards. So I'm like, okay, yeah, if you trust me to write the book, I'll write the book. And so my own knowledge of the tarot is growing as I write the book.
I can imagine now. Yeah.
Yeah. And the astrology, I knew that the astrological correspondences to the tarot were very strong. And I'm just even learning more and more about it as I go. And it can be used, but tarot can be used in an astrology reading. You could pull cards for the planets. You could pull cards for the angles.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Yeah. So that's how you could use it practically speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. You can do cards for the lunar cycles. You can do a spread for the new moon that takes you through the moon cycle, or the first quarter, the full moon, to guide you. You can do anything with the tarot, really. I'm one that likes to do my own thing a bit. Even in astrology, I'm trained as an evolutionary astrologer, but I kind of do the shamanic work in it as well. I do a lot of journey work with my clients as well and stuff, and I don't see myself as a strict rule follower. This must be my Chiron, the Aquarius.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, go on. Ask questions.
That's interesting because like I like to keep my astrology like it's like my miso soup. I don't want to add stuff into it. I like a clean soup. So I've been kind of like trying not to mix these two too much. Although I'm aware of the Thoth, the tarot deck that you showed us, that it's for those who doesn't know that, it's the Aleister Crowley deck. And you mentioned Thoth was the Egyptian god we know as Mercury, the psychonaut who is traveling between dimensions, very shamanic. And that's probably a little bit what we're doing, because I see the planetary dimensions as different dimensions in our consciousness,
Oh, I do.
operating at different speed in different time zones and in different areas of our psychology. And Thoth is the guy who runs around and delivering messages from between the gods then. But that particular tarot is filled with astrological, symbols. I think it's underneath each one of them. There's like this Mercury, Saturn thing, or how does it?
The symbols are actually, written on, but the same symbols show up in the imagery in even the Rider-Waite deck and things.
Yeah.
So just because the symbols are not actually written on, the astrology's in there, especially with the elements and such. So like the swords are. Most tarot readers think the swords are air, so the pentacles or discs are earth, swords are air, cups are water, and what am I missing?
Wands.
Wands are fire.
Yeah.
Wands are fire. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is how I use them. Like I'm a big fan of studying the elements and alchemy. you know, how we can kind of make elements work and how we also attract other elements that we need. And it's almost like an energy type of medicine. And you agree with this, that, you know, the swords are air.
I see swords.
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, I can't believe anyone would disagree. The whole, if you read through the minor arcana and the swords, you will find air, anxiety, mental stress. You know, it's all about air. Be gentle with your communication. You know, words can chop a head off and stuff like that.
I know.
Yeah, words can sting. So for me, it's very, you know, like they had to be used gently. But the sword, what I find when I look through the minor arcanas, you know, that I was thinking that the other day, I thought, I don't know, man. It feels like there's a certain element that's more loved than the other. You know, the sword is kind of like full of terrible cards. It's like, I don't want a sword card in my reading. No. You know, it's so harsh. It's like, oh no, that's terrible. So that's where I started to think, and I don't know if you agree with me there, but you know, that's how I ramble, is that I'm thinking maybe there's somebody, you know, who's behind, you know, I don't think they know exactly where the tarot originates from, you know, but it's old, that's for sure. And maybe they were kind of opposed to a certain element, whereas they loved another. You know what I mean? Like there was some sort of, that's what I've been starting to think lately, you know, like maybe there's a room for improvement there as well, you know, in terms of interpretation.
And I'm hoping to do that through this book that I'm in the middle.
So you do agree with me?
Oh, I do, yeah. And I also find, and no offense to any tarot readers out there and things, that and astrologers do it too, that, you know, these interpretations just get spewed out by rote over and over and over without any thought, without really tuning into the intuitive energy of the cards or the astrology and the planets. You know, it's kind of like saying that everything about Venus and Jupiter is good,
and everything about Mars and Saturn is bad.
Yeah.
And Pluto, by all means, stay away, you know.
I love Pluto because my chart is such that I've had Pluto transit over every single one of my planets except my moon and Uranus. I've had Pluto transit over everything,
and like I've conjunctions,
and I've had a really good life, you know. So, you know, there's so much fear in a lot of these interpretations, and I think, you know, we have to think deeper.
Yeah, and I think that's probably my ethical kind of voice kicks in here and says, do I want to be a part of a community? And I'm not pointing at anyone in particular, because I feel a lot of the people that I really hang around with, astrologically speaking, you know, who are professional about their, really professional about their astrology, are not the ones who are promoting fear. But if you go into a little bit into other areas, you know, there's like this vast, there's huge communities online, which I'm quite unaware of. And that's kind of like speculative, for instance, you know, I mean, less and less we see that now, but sometimes I really find some speculative approaches to astrology where actually you get this feeling like the ones who are writing it might not be even professional astrologers, but they're just speculating on that Armageddon fear that lives so vibrantly within everything. And I would think, even though I have no idea who's who in the tarot community, because I haven't delved into it, I'm sure that the tendency would be a little bit the same there, and even more maybe because the tarot is by its own nature a little bit dark and gloomy. It's like straight out of the Middle Ages, woohoo, you go to the tarot lady and you get your cards read, and it's a lot of woohoo, like this kind of
And
thing.
it did kind of form in very gloomy times. It started as a card game, actually.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
it developed from card games. But and a lot of people fear this deck because Crowley's
Oh,
reputation.
Crowley's reputation, oh my goodness. But he was a weirdo though. And like, I mean, I don't know, when was it? He was around like the 30s and 40s,
Yeah.
1930s. Yeah. And being such a avid atheist as he was in many ways, and having absolutely no, kind of respect for any kind of authority. Of course, he was seen as a threat to the state. And then he had all his kind of like, I don't know whether that was humorous or not, but he was called the most evil man on earth, wasn't he, at one point?
I don't get it. I read Crowley when I was a teenager, and
You did. Ah,
yeah. But I have nothing satanic about me at all. I'm just,
no, but I mean, this is something that I'm, like the satanic thing, like as a reader, as someone who's delving into the occult sciences, you can
Mhm.
easily end up in some sort of, list over people who are considered to be satanic. Like I've had that projection happen on me. I carry it as a badge of honor, to be quite
I do.
honest. I'm like, oh, thank you, you really, because I don't see the different, I think, yes, there's a good point in using the astrology wisely and without scaring people,
Yeah.
and without us, and being extremely mindful, like in terms of people are actually quite scared about their future, about the future of Earth, about everything right now. And that's making us all a little bit nervous when we sit down with the reader, for instance, because we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop in many cases. And that's, and that is why people seek out astrology or anything else, because they need to find peace where they don't find where there's just unrest, you
Yeah.
know and I think that's why sometimes astrologers and New Agers in particular get a little bit of criticism from those who consider themselves to offer better solutions to this
Yeah.
kind of inner collective distress in terms of rational thought, in terms of understanding, yeah, like for instance, atheism, which for me is extremely scary. I'm like, oh no, tell me not that my brain is, when it's turned off, that I'm dead. Woo, that's scary.
I,
For me, that's scary.
I
I
can't.
want to live forever, you know. So what can, bring peace to one person can definitely scare another one. And I think, I once met this guy on a plane to South Africa, and he was a practicing Muslim. And then I got it, the middle path, at least
Yeah.
on my end, in terms of how I approach this work. And he said to me, no, we don't use astrology in Islam. We want to surrender to God in every moment, in every breath.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a good and valid point, because that's life. You just have to surrender to each moment. You can't really um, micromanage everything that happens.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the advantage of having astrology is a little bit like having the blueprint and understanding the deeper narratives that runs through your mind, and getting in touch with those so that you can co-create together with this, I don't know, God or
Exactly.
something, so that's
And being prepared for a time that,
yeah.
for example, to go back to those Pluto transits, or some of the scarier cards in the tarot, if you kind of say, well, this, I see a challenging time coming up, but let's see how we can work with that, and pull some more cards, or look at the other aspects, or look at this, how you can face your fears, you face your shadow, how you can, manage and work your way through it so that you
Hmm.
don't fall into the abyss of despair, you know? It's like,
Yeah. Well, that's why I like evolutionary astrology. You said you had your degree in evolutionary astrology. What line, like Stephen Forrest or?
Well, a bit of both actually. My main teacher was one of Stephen Forrest's early apprentices, so I
Ah,
taught in him. But then I also studied Jeffrey Wolf Green quite a lot too. So
yeah.
so
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Like I did my studies with Maurice, and he's all Fernandez, and he was always, very archetypal around everything, and I really, really love that. The archetypal, kind of like understanding the whole kind of spectrum within a planet, and less detail oriented, focusing on if that planet, if A is connected to B in such or such way, it means exactly this. That's kind of like that type of thing. I really can't live with that. I can't breathe with it, and I can't work with it.
and that's kind of what I was saying about a lot of
Yeah,
tarot. They just say, well, this
bomb.
means this is
Yeah,
it. This is what it
yeah.
means. And yeah, I love Maurice Fernandez's work. I would have,
Ah,
if I'd known him when I first started studying professionally, I probably would have studied with him.
he's very meticulous and extremely, good teacher. Absolutely recommended. So yeah, to all you people out there, it's always advisable to do a degree in astrology. And I like evolutionary astrology when it's done more archetypally, because it offers this opportunity to not look into, the pros and cons of everything. Like for instance, like we don't use um, detriment or fall and titles like that on planets, even though I see the point. I don't want to toss away anything, but it's just getting the whole, you know, body of knowledge into a more creative format. That's what I think. Even though there are some stuff, also in the EA that I'm like always like, if you have that and that planet on the south node, you're probably not going to find happiness until your second Saturn return. And I'm like, shoot, I have that planet on my south node. No, I object. I will not, I do not concur. This is very important for me, that I have an opportunity to grow.
Yes.
And then I have an opportunity to reach an understanding of something that might be deeply karmic. And it doesn't always have to be like, okay, now second Saturn return, now you've understood, like that's like, okay, finally you can start living now. And when I'm 60, I would love to.
I just had my second Saturn return.
Oh, how was that? Congratulations. You started your career with the first one, and now you're here 30
Yeah,
years
well,
later.
this second book was published on that second Saturn
Oh,
return.
really? There you go. Yeah. Nice.
As Stephen Forrest said, because everything, all my Sagittarius stellium led up to my second Saturn return. So Saturn going over all of that. And Stephen Forrest, he was like, well, it's time for your great work. I'm like, okay.
All right. Nothing like a good portion of hard work. Loving that. Yeah, and that's good. I always loved Saturn a lot, because it's like otherwise I'd be completely, I don't want to, I would probably be out there riding the stars in outer space. So I totally adore
I have Saturn in Capricorn in my first house.
Mm. Yeah, Saturn in Capricorn in the first house. Yeah, okay, there you go. I have
Kevin,
you have a Capricorn.
He grounds all. No, I have late Sagittarius ascendant.
So you're on the galactic center.
Yes, I am.
Well, that's the shamanistic work, and I was thinking about that because there's an awful lot of images in the major and minor arcana. And I'm thinking, okay, if I need to know these cards, I probably should meditate on each and one of them, give them some time to get to know them. And I would also like to understand more how the deck is connected from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. The numbers always also matters, the number of coins, wands, swords, or chalices. Yes. So like that.
I can give you some ideas and things, and these are not my ideas, but the things I talk about in the book
Hmm?
is first pull out all the major arcana cards
Yes,
and
like
lay,
this. I'd love this.
yes, and
It
lay
was the
them
first one in my deck. I'm like, oh, good news.
just lay out the major arcana and look at how they
Yeah,
go
yeah.
and lay it out in rows of with the Fool at the top and then rows of four. So
Mm.
3, 4, and just look how they all work together, and because they're the archetypes, they're the bigger
They're
picture
the big ones. Yeah, because
archetypes.
like I'm very process oriented when I go to work with something. I'm like the process one leads to two, leads to three, leads to four, and why. And it makes sense that the tool starts everything, right? But then
Yeah.
again, there are some missing links between some of the cards, I think. I'm like, so why did you suddenly go from this to that? No, I can't make the connection. I would need some to sit with them more and just to kind of decipher them. But I think
Yeah.
what's more difficult than the major arcana is actually the minor arcana, to kind of get in touch with that in a good way, and try to understand, because if it is like an evolution of the elements in each and every one of them, let's just say that each of these the wands, the cups and everything is represents one element, then the 1 to 10 would have to be the spectrum of that element, which I think is a very, very appealing idea. It doesn't really fit into the numbers of the astrology as we see it today, like,
No, no, they don't.
no, no. So there's like another kind of numerological process going on here. And that one is where I'm kind of mostly curious actually to get into the tarot, because I want to see I want to see the connections.
Yeah, yeah. And I suggest all the way through the book, yes, of course it's a book, so I give some meanings for things, but all the way through I suggest, keeping a journal, laying out just the major arcana,
Keeping a journal, yeah.
laying out the minor arcana and just sitting with them and working with them and taking notes and laying them out in different ways, in a circle. And then, so, because I think they speak to you differently every time they do. So I have a theory. You being an Aquarian, I'm going to ask you about this. And it's something I talk about all the time with my members and in videos and you on my podcast and things about the Aquarian age that we're coming into. So I find it funny that this has like suddenly been speaking to you. I kind of think the Aquarian age is going to be a mix of the best of real old traditions in a very modern way. Okay.
Mm.
Like the rise of shamanic practices are coming back in and being blended into astrological practice. Tarot's coming in and being blended into astrological practice. And, things like the astrology of sect, the traditional astrology, there's been a big rise in the traditional
Oh yeah, it
astrology.
has, absolutely.
But I think we're going to find it done in a very modern way, not
Well, definitely. I mean, yeah.
going to break those rules. What do you think too?
Well, I had this epiphany kind of experience this winter, where I was normally, I don't know what it is with winter solstice, but I normally go into some deep mystical reflection work around that time. It's something that's just blooming in my mind. And this time it was Isis and Osiris, from the Egyptian lore, if you like, and that came to my mind, and the Sphinx and the Orion, the Orion, and the pyramids and lots of stuff Egyptian.
All the way through
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
that's what happened in my mind. It was not something I kind of searched out. It came to me, and the
Yes.
synchronicities when I kind of approach those intuitions that came to me, I asked people, that I considered to be, more trained or more having a bigger expertise in those particular fields about stuff. And it just like the way that unfolded made me really have like this, okay, this is officially a little bizarre. And then it made me dig a little deeper into the Sphinx in particular, so the carbon dating of the Sphinx is, I don't know what it's originally thought as being like 5,000 years old, but there are theories that he might be 12,500 years old. And it was facing the constellation of Leo. It was actually a lion's head on the Sphinx instead of what they assumed, and then later on, it was by some pharaoh created into a human head because he had some sort of megalomaniac moment where he wanted to replace something like that. That makes sense to me. That could happen. That's plausible.
When humans are prime.
Yeah. And there used to be lions, in Egypt before the drought, and then they had to migrate further south. So I had all these things going on. I had powerful meditations around Isis and Osiris, which is it's a little reminiscent of the Shiva and Shakti myth as well, because one of them is dying, and
it's all that Heros, Gamos, and the
exactly. So, but anyway, I had these thoughts, and if you look into the greater year, the Platonic year, which is the year that kind of decides what type of age we're in, depending on which sign is rising on the spring equinox, which is now Pisces. And it used to be Aries, and if you go further back in time, eventually it used to be Leo.
Taurus, bull worship, and before that,
and before that. But for me, the age of Leo is particularly interesting because in this connection with Sirius and everything, and the Egyptian culture per se. So that would be the year in the Platonic year, the great year, where we are closest to Sirius. That would be the golden age, if you want to use the ages in the Indian equivalent. Now we're in the Kali Yuga. That would be the Surya Yuga, right? That would be when we are closest. I think that's what it's called, Surya Yuga. And that's when we were closest to Sirius, which is considered by actually some scientists to be part of a solar family that we belong to. We have some cycles with certain stars.
I'm supposed to be Syrian according to Akashic.
Well, I don't know where I'm from, but currently made out of, I'm currently here, but yes,
Exactly.
But I'm very curious about, these kinds of cycles because of it's just an intuition I have, in terms of understanding the ages. And now we're very far away. We're at the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, where we're far away from the great brothers of Sirius, the great light, the Surya, the light of spirit. And we have this extremely materialistic culture that we're living in right now. And we've recently come out of the age of Pisces, or we're about to come out, we're in between the ages, and this massive crisis, this paradigm crisis is happening, and we are all feeling like a little smell of Armageddon in the air, because we feel this disintegration of the old at some level. And even though it's slower than we like, and thankfully so, probably. We're moving slowly into the age of Aquarius, which is the opposite side of Leo, right? So we're still at the back end of the cycle, far away from the Surya, the spirit world, in a way, right? And then, but I think when we enter into the age of Aquarius, there will be a connection to the age of Leo somehow, because of its opposite correlation, So I think we'll actively be searching out that light again. And I've often said, you can kill religion. Yes, you can kill religion. You can eliminate and eradicate religion from Earth. but I think it would be harder to kind of eliminate and eradicate the natural spirituality that lives in us all. That's just simply impossible.
Oh, impossible. Yeah.
It is,
And
unless
I'm all
it's not real.
I'm all for the death of some organized religion, but you can't kill that. You can't kill that religious urge in people.
Evidently not. I think, even though we become rational, and this is what happens in Aquarius, we become self-conscious. I think that would be a great service to humanity in general. And, and internet is helping us. We become aware of our shadows, our projections, our reactions a lot. And there's a huge awakening in that. It's like, oh my, I am an asshole. That was quite assholey said. Maybe I should try to be a little bit more, take a little bit more time before I respond. Or like people go into these processes where they start to kind of see themselves, and that's so hard. And the lion, it's just there. It radiates out from its heart, and it's just there. And when we get to Aquarius, we come to the mindfulness approach. We come to the self-awareness, and then there's this understanding that I belong to a certain group of energy. Like my typical energy is very intuitive. I would leave out the science that in the format we know it to people who are really into that. I could never be a mathematician, for instance. Even I did calculate my own charts when I started out with astrology, but my heart and my soul and my everything in me just wants to move into intuitive sciences. It's just who I am. Art, intuitive sciences, language. I really love that, and that's who I am. And I might not be able to communicate my ideas in an understandable way to a scientist, and vice versa. So there's like these different groups on Earth today that are not separating. We are not working together. And that would be the very upper end of the Aquarian age, is that the groups understand that everybody's needed. We need everybody. I would love to see a cooperation between traditional medicine and complementary medicine, for instance. And
I see hope for that.
I do that too. Thank you.
I do see some, pure scientists starting to acknowledge that, there's a place complementary medicines and things, and it's been happening for a while. For example, my dad died from glioblastoma, the brain cancer. Like it was in 1997, and the National Health sent somebody around with essential oils just to make him feel better. Because and so though I think it's happening.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it is. I just got all wound up today because we have this VAT. There was a legislation made without hearing in last summer, and it put a VAT on all complementary medicine, and in effect from January, just like 6 months later, and it wrecked. It kind of disturbed the whole business, like of massage therapists, of anyone who's doing complementary treatments like acupuncturists and stuff like that, and this was during the COVID that this came about. And I thought, this is exactly what I think is so horrendous with the way we understand health, and I spent thousands of dollars on my own health. Like if I have a problem, I'll call my massage therapist. I will be standing in line outsourcing those needs. I'll take and do whatever I can at the quickest moving pace I possibly can, because I'm ready to get back out there again. I'm not,
Same, and but I will also go to the regular doctor if it's something that the
Yeah,
complementary
sure, of
medicine.
course, of course.
Yeah,
I often,
exactly.
and if I have a problem, I go check it out, and then I see if he can't help me, I'm going to try something else. Like I remember once I had water in my inner ear or something, and I went to my doctor, and they said, "Yeah, you have some water in your inner ear." And I'm like, what do we do about it? Because it's really starting
Yeah.
to like ow, ow, Oh, yeah, we get you some medicines, and they were like so weird. Those medicines, because they were so hyper stimulating and dried out all my kind of, everything. It tried to dry out my system, right? Everything was just draining all the fluids. I'm like constantly thirsty
Oh,
and then, hyperactive and then super tired. And I'm like, I can't be going on these medicines. Like slightly, I still have my ear. So I went to my acupuncturist, and it took me, I think, half a year of treatments before I was good. So I know I don't give up just by
yeah.
trying once. That's not how the body works. It's like I think these holistic methods, they require much more patience. And the problem I have with, the VAT is that, we're being punished for taking care of our own health. Now we have to be, like people are being punished for wanting to pay for their own health
Yeah.
by having to pay more. And it's
Oh, that's
already quite hard to get people to actually take charge of their own health already.
yeah.
It is.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. I always try to find the good though, and I guess
But
I
that's difficult
don't know
though.
what to
Yeah,
quibble with
sure.
VAT, but to talk about the integration of kind of the polar opposites, don't you think some of this? And I'm not a scientist, so this is my very rudimentary kind of feelings and intuition about it. But all this quantum science is
Hmm.
kind of showing what astrology has believed for millennia, really.
Hmm. Yeah.
To me, science and astrology are coming closer too. So,
Hopefully, and if we just go back to the tarot, what is the science between picking a card, for instance?
yeah,
Where are we when we pick our cards? I think as a reader, that you always tune in. You always tune in, and for me, it's always been like a magnificent co-creation between synchronicities that happens before reading. Like I can get like, oh, and then midway through a reading, I understand why I had that experience just before. And it's not like it happened just once, because that would be an anomaly, and I can, that happens. It's a pattern, you know.
yeah, always. Yeah,
Always. Yeah. And that sort of, when you have that experience, and I've had it for like 20 years, I've been working with astrology professionally, so for 20 years, I had the opportunity to kind of observe. Of course, I
mm,
like my nature being Aquarius, I don't draw any conclusions like that. It's like, yeah, sure, I work with guides, and like I have like three guides that I normally work with. I'm not like that.
no,
But I've seen things, and I'm like, and I know it, that's a problem we always bump into, this anecdotal approach. It's just
yeah,
your words, your experience. You could be crazy. So sometimes I have the feeling like the science community is looking at us metaphysical witches as somewhat delusional. And for me, that's weird, because
it's weird to me too. And it's what we do, and it sounds like we read astrology charts in a very similar way.
yeah,
When I
yeah, I'm starting to think so.
when I go into a reading, it's like the chart kind of the symbols just jump out at me and things. And yes, it's formed on very many years of study, book study and
Oh yeah.
learning, and
Yeah.
also there's something extra that comes through, and that's when I kind of really hit a chord with a client usually.
Yes.
You know, that's when the tears come, usually good
Mm,
tears release, you
mm,
know, where they've really been seen. And it's not necessarily any words I've read in a book ever.
mm.
It's just
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, Jung said that, you can educate therapists, but you're born one.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know whether or not that's a skill you can't learn, like I don't know how long I was like that, that I had that opportunity, that this door was open. But now that I'm starting to kind of, I don't use tarot in my work yet, and I'm not sure if I will. For me, it's more, I want to understand it. That's it. It's just like pure curiosity. I want to understand the process behind the tarot, the arcanas. But
I don't really use it in a reading.
reading, yeah. But
except maybe I'll pull a couple of cards at the end of the reading to finish.
But I would love to know
Yeah.
what's the powers behind pulling a card.
Yeah. I just think it's our connection with.
Oh, my friend, I had a friend, he's very scientific. I think he's an engineer or something. And he was recently on this burn festival, like the New Nordic Burn, it's called. And inside this burn, you know, people then bring their offerings. That's the nature of a burn, you know, like a Burning Man thing, you know, bring what you have and share your gift. Very co-creational Leo Aquarius polarity. And two girls there, they brought there some sort of like animal spirit cards, and that was their offering to the festival, which was like everybody could come in and just pull a card. And my friend, who is he's an engineer, you know, he has a very strong capacity for rational thought, you know. He came in and he pulled a card, and before he pulled it, he said fox, and he pulled up a fox. And then they read the interpretation of fox, and fox was always his kind of like thing from the childhood. He had heard something like he looked like a fox or something, or I can't remember quite what that was. And it stayed with him. And he said, that was just mind blowing. I'm like, and then he started, I was wondering, as a rational person would, why did I pull that card? Why? What was the power behind it? You know, these are the things that fascinate me, and that's metaphysical. Yeah, sure. You know, it's for me, it's just like, how random is it if it's a pattern?
I know, and I don't know if these things will ever be explained. To be honest,
no, it's a little hard.
I've been reading, you know, things about that since I was a teenager, and like, I don't know if we'll ever explain it.
That's true. And I think, you know, being an astrologer and, you know, dabbling in esoteric occult arts, I found peace with it, you know, that the scientific method that we use now, that is, you know, that is kind of embraced systematically, is not opening up for anomalies and weird, strange, inexplicable, you know, experiences, and reduces it to anecdotal evidence and confirmation bias and stuff like that. And I'm like, excuse me, sir, I refuse to be reduced to a confirmation bias. We should have t-shirts. I'm reduced to anecdotal evidence.
And it's kind of funny being kind of stuck in this place of, I both trust a lot of science, but not all science. And then I don't trust all of what I would call the woo world either. You know, I think a lot of that, basically. Yes.
Yes, I agree with you. It's hard to know what is what these days. And I think that's part of, you know, the struggle people have today, right? But how do you find when they come to you and you know, do they sometimes ask for like a tarot reading or just the tarot?
I have been asked for just readings, yeah, and I've done them for people, but I'm primarily an astrologer.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Once an astrologer, always an astrologer. You can't really go back, right?
But I love bringing in my shamanic practices to it as well, you know, and I do most of this with my membership. I get my members doing shamanic journeys to the planets and things, and getting them to have a conversation with the planets, talk to them.
Yeah, that's what my father taught me when I first wanted to study astrology. He's just said, just look at the planets. You know, like he was that was like my introduction to astrology. So little wonder I ended up here today talking with you. I think, you know, that wildly fascinates me. You know, where can we journey and how do we journey and what we see. And and how incredibly accurate.
Oh,
Um,
it
yeah,
really is.
yes, to the
When people
point.
go in, but I kind of think, am I doing myself out of a job by getting people to read their own? But no.
Read your own damn chart. You can do it. Be your own guru. Come on. Well, well, hopefully we'll be unemployed ones, or as they say, the Chinese proverb was that a Chinese medicine man is happy when he has no clients or something like that, because his work is working. You know, the
I don't see it happening anytime soon, though. I mean,
no, well,
I have readings on occasion too, just to get another perspective.
yeah, that's good. I think, Bill Mulligan, who was my peer person in OPA, he always said that once a year I go to see another astrologer just to get a bit of different perspective, just to, open up my mind a little bit, because we sit here in our own bubbles, like we're in our towers,
You
and
do.
we rarely meet each other as colleagues. So I guess it's a healthy thing to do, which reminds
Oh.
me, I haven't done that in quite a while. Maybe I should do that now. I haven't done that in years.
You'll know when the time's right. Or I'll go for a different type of reading sometimes. Like I mentioned something about the Akashic records. Now, it's not my thing, the Akashic records, but I've had an Akashic record reading just to see what it was
What it
about
is. Yeah.
and what message it had for me, just
Stay informed. Yeah. Akashic record. Okay. I'm barely familiar. I've heard, I know what the term is, but yeah, I guess you go into your, that's would be like going to your deepest soul potential thing, kind of thing. And
it's the library of your soul kind of thing,
yeah,
really.
okay, wow. Interesting. Oh well,
Yeah.
shall not judge anything before you've experienced it. So, I guess my curiosity probably would drive me into examining things. However, I'm always a little precautious, because once things are said, they cannot be unsaid.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Yeah. So I'm careful who I have my
Yeah,
readings with.
that's the I think maybe I've been burned a few times,
I
having been
have,
too open
yeah.
and
And
too
I try to pick people who are very grounded as well. So
hmm.
yeah, because there's a lot of ungrounded disconnection in
Yeah,
this world, right?
I've seen some, yeah, well, I've seen some incredibly, yeah, some of the clients that, really had experiences with previous, I'm sure I can make mistakes myself as well, like I'm not perfect, but I have a limit, very clear limits to what I say or where I go in a reading, like there's certain things you just have to be super careful about that I've experienced other people aren't, and scared, their clients almost half to death, if I don't do anything about this full moon, the train's going to leave the station and I'm never going to have an opportunity again. And I'm like, huh?
No,
That's like a bullshit. Stop
I
believing in
know.
this bullshit thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I'm very cautious of how I say things,
Yeah.
and particularly with like a Mars transit or a Pluto transit, as I've mentioned before, I've found some of those the most rewarding in my life. So
Mm. Well, I'm facing a Pluto on my Venus, and I can feel the rumble in the ground. I've
yeah,
had the year of outer transits to my personal points is this year. Everything, like Uranus square my sun and Neptune square my moon, and Pluto on my Venus. So I thought if I ever do a reading, it should be now. It's like, what's that about? But I can feel it, and it's not really. I really enjoyed it. It's been extremely educational and inspiring. Yeah,
I think
so far.
Pluto and Venus work very well together, to be honest. I
Okay.
you know you know this whole higher octave and lower octave thing,
Yeah.
which I'm not completely sure I'm on board with. But
Okay.
you know, Venus and Neptune, they always say, but it's thanks to another astrologer I talk to a lot of the time, Kevin Eulinger. I think that's how I say his last name. I've been looking at Pluto and Venus as kind of more connected because they're both connected with desire. So earthly desire, soul's desire, deep desires.
Should be
So
looking at that connection. I see the correlation between Mars and Pluto, though. There is such a, but
so
you
do
know,
I, but I think Venus is so broad in nature that she's connected to more too. So, and I think there's more than one connection. That's like
yeah,
saying,
that's what I was thinking now. I'm like, maybe both Mars and Venus.
yeah, well, exactly, yeah, Mars and Venus. Yeah.
Well, I can really feel that it's something is happening, and it's such a huge shift that I wonder who I'll be when I come out on the other side. And I just look, that's a little bit like the Uranus square my sun as well. It's like everything is like up in the open now. Everything can happen. That's how what I feel. It's like and
I feel like that too, but then Neptune's squaring my 12th house sun. So.
oh, well, don't lose your keys or yourself. Or maybe do
Oh, I
that.
feel
Lose
like
yourself.
a lot of the time, yeah. But I also feel like it's all coming into, like you said, you had the big influx of stuff. That's happening to me. I can't read fast enough, and I can't tune in fast enough.
Hmm.
I'm going through audio books on my walks, like
Oh
at
yeah.
a rate of knots because I just can't learn enough about like Isis, Osiris,
Yeah, you just want to learn everything.
Jesus, Magdalene. It's all this stuff. It's just like speaking to me all the time.
I can imagine that must be, and that's the Neptunian thing. It's like, Holy
Yeah.
Spirit, oh my God. It's very inspirational, yes. And Aquarius, being an Aquarius with Uranus square my sun, I actually started as an astrologer when Uranus was conjunct my sun. And that's sometimes it just happened. I never planned it. I just found myself in a new city I've never been to before and randomly looking for work when I looked at this alternative center and I went in. And I'm like, hi. Well, I was just at that time just like dabbling. That's what I thought. And then she
Yeah.
said, this clairvoyant woman that met me, she said, "You're going to work here." And I stayed there for 5 years.
Oh,
Yeah, it was very, and I haven't done anything else since. So it was very strange and very sudden and very out of the blue. And that's sometimes how Uranus operates. Like you felt the dissatisfaction for quite a while, but then again, there was no new alternatives showing. And then suddenly, boom, there it was. So I'm still curious because it's not over yet. Sometimes it manifests a little bit later as well, after the turmoil, the inner separation or liberation from the past is done, then something new can manifest. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that works out. But again, every time, as we started out this conversation with, when we see these big ones coming into, your personal planets and stuff like that, I find it's so tempting to go to the worst case scenario, even for me, and I've trained for a lot of years.
and I almost shudder when I see people saying this, particularly on Facebook. And oh, ugh, I'm gonna have Pluto's approaching my thing, and I'm like going, well, if you fear it, it's more likely to be difficult.
Hmm. Yeah, but I
Leave.
understand people fear it because we have so much pain that we've experienced already, and we just don't want to feel more pain. So I get it. And Earth, such a crazy place. It's so weird to live some.
No, I mean, I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't say anything. I just go, but I'm like, oh, please don't fear it. Please lean in. Please get support. Go to therapy. Pluto's a good time to go to therapy.
Well, then you can start a Sagittarius crusade. Like, listen, dude, it's positive. It's going to be marvelous. Yeah, there's opportunities here. What would we do without Sagittarius, huh? It would be so boring
Yeah.
here. Well,
Yeah, you've probably noticed how many of my posts say we have an opportunity.
yeah, you do. Opportunity is your favorite word. Yeah, it would be so. Okay, so we take that. Sagittarius' favorite word is opportunity. Okay, we could have that. Good. Well, it was nice to have the opportunity to have you here today. Absolutely, I'm sure, and to get to know you better. Well, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll make sure that all the important links where people can reach you will be found in the yeah. So yeah,
And it's
thank you.
Cosmic Owl Astrology, if anybody wants to know. My
Yeah,
owls.
yeah, your owl, yeah. The hoot, the cosmic owl hoot. Hoot. Yeah, nice one. So thank you very much and enjoy your Neptune square sun transit. I'm sure it will wield a lot of interesting stuff. Hmm?
And enjoy your Pluto transit.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Can't wait. All right. Good. Ciao.